A truly terrifying villain should stop the audience in their tracks, right? That's villain 101, yet somehow, even some of the biggest animation studios still struggle with it. We're told to fear the villain, to respect them, but often we just don't. So why does this happen? And more importantly, what makes a villain genuinely frightening? And what turns them into forgettable antagonists? There are 4 core ways to craft a villain that leaves your audience trembling. The first is the villain who doesn't even need to try. Take Death from Puss in Boots. He arrives not with a dramatic fanfare or booming music, but with calm, almost casual confidence. Every small detail of his presence whispers danger. Did you notice the candle flickering out just before he steps into a scene? That subtle darkness isn't random, it's symbolic. Death needs shadows to enter, because death is shadow. It's what we see when our eyes close for the last time. And even without going that far, darkness unnerves us, because we never quite know what's hiding there. Every element of Death's design reinforces this. His cloak, his silhouette, the dark color palette, it all mirrors the inevitable, inescapable presence he represents. And then there's the whistle. An auditory cue that precedes his arrival, signaling absolute control before he even steps on screen. His white fur stands in stark contrast to his blackness, a visual echo of the eternal clash between life and death. Wagner Moore's measured, flat delivery. I do love the smell of fear. It's intoxicating, cements the tension. Combine that with his towering figure, red glowing eyes, and twin sickles, and you've got a villain who radiates dread without moving a muscle. Death doesn't need to perform to frighten. His calm, unblinking demeanor when he casually asks Puss for an autograph, sign right there,
sign right there,
is infinitely more terrifying than any scream. He embodies inevitability. The wolf at the end of the road. Puss runs, but death doesn't chase. He doesn't have to. Fear arises from the knowledge that some battles are unwinnable. The terror here isn't physical, it's existential. Pitch from Rise of the Guardians shares this effortless evil trait, but with a playful, chaotic twist. While death is stillness and silence, Pitch is motion and unpredictability. He is darkness itself, both literal and metaphorical. The fear hiding under the bed, the shadow behind the door. Before he even enters the frame, the Guardians are already on edge. A creeping shadow swallows the globe at the North Pole, and even the mighty North stiffens. The universe itself seems to hold its breath. Pitch's power isn't just in what he does, but in what he represents. The Guardians speak of him like a returning plague, a name they never wanted to utter again. The Man in the Moon even recruits Jack Frost specifically to counter him, a narrative way of saying that this villain is so dangerous. Even cosmic forces need reinforcements. Pitch terrifies not through brute force, but through legend and the subtle dread of anticipation. Every shadow he casts, every whisper of fear, builds tension long before his face is revealed. Similarly, Ramses in The Prince of Egypt is frightening because his cruelty is almost natural, almost inevitable. He inherits power, yes, but he surpasses his father's tyranny. Moses once considered him a brother, yet Ramses' transformation into a figure of unyielding wrath, arrogance, and entitlement stuns us deeply. Even love cannot reach him. This effortless fear, the kind rooted in inevitability and moral corruption, is profoundly unsettling. It lingers in the mind, haunting, because it feels disturbingly possible. Not all villains reach these heights. Mor-U in Brave is built as a legendary threat, an ancient prince cursed by ambition. But when he finally appears, he's just a giant, angry bear. Roaring and charging is impressive visually, but it lacks psychological depth. There's no subtle dread, no lingering unease, just brute force. Unlike Death or Pitch, Mor-U crashes through the story without haunting it, which brings us to the second way to terrify: quiet, controlled menace. Lord Shen from Kung Fu Panda 2 is a masterclass in this. Every step, every movement is precise and elegant, almost ballerina-like. His white feathers and muted robes reflect a quiet, aristocratic elitism, while his calm demeanor conceals a deadly ambition. Shen's quiet menace is amplified by patience and obsession. 30 years I've waited for this moment. Everything must be exactly as I envisioned. Every word, every gesture is calculated, making his stillness infinitely more terrifying than a lion's roar. Shen isn't alone in this category. Villains like Dr. Olivia Octavius in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or the other mother in Coraline wield a subtle terror. Olivia's soft, warm voice masks deadly intent. She moves through the lab with curiosity and gentleness, all while destroying everything in her path. The other mother lures Coraline with love and attention, only to tighten her grip without ever raising her voice. Their quiet, measured approach makes them psychologically disturbing because they use calm to control, not chaos. Contrast this with Steppenwolf from Justice League, who attempts quiet menace but fails. His soft-spoken, godlike persona reads as robotic and unconvincing. Calmness without depth or subtlety doesn't frighten, it bores. This is why understanding tone and psychological weight is critical. The difference between menace that lingers and menace that fizzles often lies in nuance. The third type of terrifying villain leverages reputation to instill fear before they even appear. Drago Bloodfist in How to Train Your Dragon 2 is a prime example. Even his name carries menace. Drago, almost like a dragon, and Bloodfist, suggesting merciless violence. By the time Hiccup hears of him, gates are slammed, dragons are grounded, and even Stoic reacts with fear. Drago's legend precedes him, making his eventual appearance feel inevitable and devastating. DreamWorks cleverly delays his reveal with a masked figure of Hiccup's mother, heightening suspense and leaving the audience imagining just how formidable Drago truly is. The Horned King from the Black Cauldron works similarly. His terror builds from others' dread and the stakes of his mission, acquiring the Black Cauldron to raise an undead army. Even before we see him, the anticipation and fear are palpable. His minions' fear, the whispered stories, and the looming threat of violence build a tension that grips the audience's imagination. By the time the Horned King emerges, his power and ruthlessness are almost anticlimactic because we've already experienced terror. Conversely, Screenslaver in Incredibles 2 tries this method but fails. The reveal deflates the tension, and the villain's power and motivations feel underdeveloped. Reputation alone cannot create fear without follow-through. This is a key lesson. Building legend is only half the battle. The villain must live up to the hype. The fourth type relies on raw, overwhelming power. These are villains who dominate every scene, not subtly, not through legend, but through sheer force. They don't lurk, whisper, or rely on fear of the unknown. They create fear through dominance, control, and sheer destructive capability. Tai Lung in Kung Fu Panda is the perfect example. Imprisoned in a fortress designed to contain him, he escapes with terrifying efficiency, dismantling everything in his path. Every element, from the vertical mountain prison to the thousands of guards stationed at every level, is a testament to his perceived containment. Yet, he uses a single dropped feather to pick a lock, snap his restraints, and begin a methodical, brutal climb. He turns the entire fortress into a war zone, flinging guards aside, swinging from wreckage, and scaling walls that were never meant to be climbed. By the time he emerges, his sheer power and precision make the audience feel the stakes are impossible. General Kai in Kung Fu Panda 3 demonstrates a different kind of dominance. As a soul stealer, he defeats legendary masters, absorbs their chi, and raises them as jade zombies under his control. His presence skews the balance of power entirely in his favor. For the audience, every confrontation feels impossible to win, heightening suspense. Mandrake from Epic shows how power can fail to terrify if not executed properly. Though visually menacing and conceptually threatening, his destructive force is slow and inevitable rather than immediate and overwhelming. Tai Lung and Kai dominate directly. Mandrake represents decay and environmental threat. The difference is subtle but crucial. Fear thrives on immediacy, on stakes that feel alive in the moment. Across all these examples, one truth emerges. A terrifying villain is more than a monster. They are inevitability, control, legend, or raw power made manifest. They manipulate perception, playing on psychological, visual, auditory, and narrative cues. They don't just challenge heroes, they haunt the audience, lingering in the mind long after the credits roll. Whether it's Death's calm inevitability, Pitch's creeping legend, Shen's aristocratic precision, Drago's fearsome reputation, or Tai Lung's unstoppable force, the best villains exploit fear on multiple levels. They don't merely roar, they dominate, manipulate, and unsettle. They force the audience to confront what terrifies them most: the unknown, the inevitable, and the unstoppable. And that is the essence of a truly terrifying villain, one who leaves a mark not just on the story, but on the minds of the audience, echoing long after the final scene fades to black.